Hey folks, I'm Eugene Driscoll. Welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy's weekly podcast. Today our guest is Dr. Matthew Conway, the superintendent of Derby Public Schools. We're going to talk about the field situation in the city of Derby and the school district / city's efforts to reconfigure their fields so they can construct a new field house off Chatfield Street, put in an artificial multi-use field where the football field currently is, and a track. To do that, they have to move the baseball field that is now next to the football field. There's been a lot of twists and turns in this story over the last 2 years. It looks like it's becoming more and more positive. And before we get into the interview, I just want to put in a little plug for valleyindy.org. Are you hosting a fundraiser? Are you advertising on Facebook? Stop. For $99, the Valley Indy can publicize your event. We'll get it on valleyindy.org. It'll appear on the New Haven Independent, and we'll promote your event on Facebook to our 13,000 plus followers, plus an additional 5,000 on Twitter. If you want more information, contact me, Eugene Driscoll at Gmail. Okay, on to the interview. On the line, we have Derby School Superintendent Dr. Matthew Conway, and I read a story in the New Haven Register this morning. Today is Friday. I don't know what the date is, but apparently this field situation, I mean, it's a good problem to have, but it's taking more twists and turns than a soap opera, but all good. It's really quite amazing, everything that's happened in the last, year or two. With this quest to improve field space in Derby. So it sounds like the baseball field relocation committee and the Board of Aldermen have decided that the best place to put a new baseball field is where the softball field plays right now. Can you go through the latest?
Sure, you're exactly correct. Both of those boards, committee and board, passed that, and as early as last night, the Board of Aldermen passing that. And that is correct, that the motion actually is that Plan A would be that the baseball field is relocated to where the girls' softball field is currently located, and that if for some reason, while we have an architectural plan that says it will fit there, if something doesn't work due to some circumstances unknown to either committee now, that Plan B, they would go to Plan B, which would put the baseball field up on the Ken Marcusio Sports Complex, where you would fill in over Nutmeg Ave to fit the field up there, but keep it on campus. Okay,
and then Little League would still be able to play up there, and all the.
Well, with that scenario that we looked at, that would cause the need to relocate Little League fields to somewhere else in town.
And okay, so that's option B. Is there any idea right now how doable option A is? Because obviously it seems like option A is the preferred way to go. Could you give a percentage if you were a betting person? How certain is option A over option B?
We have right now architectural plans that were provided to the committees that show that a regulation size high school baseball field can fit where the girls softball field is now by going into the hill behind what's currently home plate, going into that hill 35 to 40 feet. You can get 325 down each line and 350 to center field.
But I don't know how to change a light bulb, but I've been on that hill. I've had my kids roll down it. It's a fun hill. It's a steep hill, but it's a hill. That is quite a construction project. Is there, right. What has to go into that? What are the hurdles? What are the potential hurdles with that project?
We thought initially, until this morning actually, Eugene, that it may require a retaining wall. So, one, they'll have to test to see what's actually in that hill, and then what it would take to do the excavation work, and then if a retaining wall is needed to then support the rest of the earth behind that hill once you dig into it. So until we have the architect complete his work with a civil engineer to determine that, we won't have answers. But we had anticipated excavation costs that would include a retaining wall in order to put the field there.
Okay, and at what point, I know initially, I know this has been a long discussion, there's been about 1 million scenarios out there. For a while there, it looked like the best option or the most reasonable option that would affect the least amount of programs and people in the city of Derby was to move the baseball field to Whittick Park and then put rearrange the current soccer field layout for Whittick Park. How did the plan change? How did you sort of revert to this other plan in the last couple of weeks?
When we received a phone call, when actually Mr. Pascal received a phone call from an incredible woman named Joan Payton, and reaching out and inquiring what projects we had going on in Derby, and one conversation led to another, which put me in touch with Joan regarding the field house that was pulled out of the project, if you remember, to reduce it from the initial $4.8 million bond request to $2.9 million.
Let me just interrupt because we might be getting too inside baseball. Just for our listeners, if you're not familiar with the trials and tribulations of this project, it all started because the city/school district was able to snag about $3 million from the State Bond Commission to put in a new track and a new multi-use artificial field at the Ryan Athletic Complex in Derby. So that created a lot of a domino effect, and that's where this all comes from. So sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's okay. It's good. Great clarification. With that phone call and subsequent conversations with Ms. Payton, and then receiving confirmation that she wanted to donate $2 million for the construction of the field house, and also explaining in that while her dad, J.R. Payton, Joseph Raymond Payton, who graduated in 1915, had played football here, both his principal love and her brother Bill's, who has since passed away in 2013, principal love was baseball. And once I heard that, I thought, boy, that might be neat to be able to do the field house and a baseball field in proximity to each other on campus, in memory of JR and Bill and their love for baseball and her quest to give back to the Derby community. And can it be done within the donation that Joan, so generously offered us? And so Joan and I talked about that, and she was fully supportive of the idea. It was cost prohibitive for us to build the baseball field on campus, given the amount of excavation that we would need to do, given the funding that we had from just the $2.9 million from the state. So this gave us an opportunity to at least open that conversation back up and reconsider initial plans that we had from day one to keep the baseball field on campus. And so that's how we got to where we were, bringing the baseball field back on campus and considering initially the Little League complex, the Ken Marcusio Sports Complex, as a location, building out over Nutmeg Ave. In further thinking about this and holding the different meetings, considering everybody's needs in the community, and how can we do this with the least amount of displacement of existing programs. And I went back to a plan that we had on the table initially, which was, can the baseball field fit where the girls' softball field currently is. And at the time, 2 years ago, when we thought about that, we didn't go down that road due to the cost of the excavation, but I reconsidered it and reached back out to our architect if this was something that could we fit, and he informed me yes, and provided me two different drawings where it could fit, which has led now to it's the least disruptive plan on the table, where we don't have to relocate any youth programs, Little League or soccer. Nobody gets displaced. Nobody gets their current fields interrupted. The only people it affects is the high school athletic program, which is what the funding is for. So how can we now as a group work to relocate the softball field by keeping it on campus? And what are the options we have for that, as opposed to trying to put the baseball field somewhere else?
And so it's pretty amazing for, the residents and the student population up there to be able, because one thing that, nobody wanted to move necessarily the baseball field from its sort of on-campus location to across to the other side of Derby, because you're trying to support the baseball team, the high school baseball team. It's better to have it all in one place. So it's really amazing that Joan Payton is sort of a saint for Derby. You would not be in this position if it wasn't for the fact that she put in a phone call to the high school principal and got you to where you are. It's a pretty amazing story.
Yes, it is. It's absolutely incredible, and every day I'm reminded by that as we look at this project and how we got to where we are today. And Eugene, the really exciting part of it is the thought and where we want to end up going in at the end, and the history that we're learning about JR, about Derby in 1915 and early in the late 1800s. That we also want to incorporate into the design and overall plan of the field house as well.
And just the field house, touching upon that subject for a second, before I wrote one of the stories a couple of months ago or weeks ago, or whenever it was, I put on Twitter, somebody explained to me what this Derby field house is. I don't have the institutional knowledge, and basically I had a bunch of tweets saying it's a smelly slab of concrete, essentially. Like the memories there aren't so. So I thought when I first heard when I had first interviewed you, okay, they're going to replace the field house. All right, it's a field house. It's not the Taj Mahal. But in fact, the plans for this field house are sort of the word field house probably doesn't do it justice. Can you describe what it's going to be? Sure.
Well, the end design will be up to the committee and the architect and Ms. Payton. The way it's in, Joan and I, though, share a very similar vision for the field house, where this will really be more a place for the community. And when you typically think of a field house of just locker rooms and showers and storage, it'll be much more than that. Given her vision, it'll be a place for to display our history of athletics through the years, all the awards, the trophies, memorabilia, a place for people to gather for events, not just to see a game, but to actually have, we think, catered events being held here, where we'll be able to invite and people from outside the community to use it as a meeting place, a place to hold a banquet, a place to come and visit and experience the history of Derby and Derby athletics and what it really means, the past and what it means to Derby, as well as viewing areas of both the baseball field and the football, soccer, and track from that one location as well, and incorporate into the design of it, coming down from the upper parking lots. This will be the central place you come down to. You'll look off one side, and you have the football field, soccer field, and track, and the other side you'll have the baseball field.
That's great. I mean, and I should just throw out that, I mean, I live in that neighborhood, so I probably have a bias. But, I mean, you got Derby Neck Library there. You've got the new middle school, which is a beautiful building. And then the way this could all tie in together is really exciting for Derby. And as someone who lives in the area, I look forward to that. What are the next steps now? Everything takes a long time, obviously. The planning process and the review process and going to the P&Z alone can take a little bit. What are the next immediate steps that are happening in this process?
So for the field house and the baseball field, we expect from the architect some initial descriptions of the building, layout of the baseball field, and proposals for the project moving forward. From the athletic complex committee on March 8th, they will be reviewing presentations from 3 architectural firms that submitted RFQs for that project, and hopefully shortly thereafter, if not that evening, select the architect for that project. Once that happens, the 2 architects can get together. We can get a full site layout survey completed and begin work. So, but the initial design phase is what we're in now, and will be for the next 2 months, I would imagine, as we move forward, and then hopefully within that period of time get a hard date for shovel in the ground for one of the 2 projects.
And then the other thing I read in Gene Sosno-Fabovich's article in the New Haven Register was, I guess the aldermen, and maybe this isn't under your jurisdiction, but they created I think it said a 16-member committee. Is that accurate? That's like a quarter of Derby. That's half the city right there is on this committee. I feel slighted not being invited on, but what is everybody else is on it? But what is that committee?
And the more voice in a project like this, I think the better. It is very, very exciting. So I think the more people in the room to share in the excitement is great, especially when we're trying to build something that will kind of display the history of Derby, at the same time providing a great facility for our current athletes, but honor our past as well. So. But it is a committee that will consist of the Board of Education. For this particular project, given the money was donated to Derby Public Schools, the Board of Education will serve on that committee. And the Board of Education had then authorized myself to appoint 6 people in addition to the Board of Ed to that committee. And my intent always was, which I had shared with the board, to be inclusive of the other boards and commissions who at the end of the day either have to approve any design, permitting, or otherwise that we do for this project, or are actually at the end of the day involved in the scheduling on use of the fields and the field house and or upkeep of the field and field house once everything is built. So any entity within the community that is involved in use of, care of, or permitting of, I wanted on the committee itself so that we save time as we go through this process, and you don't have a committee making decisions without those people at the table, only to find out once you go to their board or commission meeting for permission, you find out that you have to do things differently, and you're back to square one now, rescheduling, redesigning, and now having to go back to a meeting 30 days later for approval. So the hope is that the more inclusive we are on this committee, we can move the project along quicker, having people with knowledge of the different boards and commissions at the table as decisions are being discussed and made.
Okay. I said I would take 15 minutes. We're like at the 19-minute mark. But since I have you,
Okay.
and if you can't, if you're not prepared to answer, we can maybe do it for another podcast. But we're entering in Ansonia. Last week we had about 100,000 guest columns on their budget, the school budget, and we had the two school administrators on in Ansonia to talk about their school budget. And there's a lot of apprehension, at least in that city, about ECS funding and the different state funding that is coming or not coming. I'm wondering, how is the school board budget coming along? Is it harder than previous years? Are we looking at an increase because you're losing grant money? What's the status of your budget?
So the piece that's up in the air right now is the Alliance District funding. So we did spend some time, myself with our administrators, in putting together two blueprints, one with and one without Alliance District funding, using all of our data to drive those decisions on terms of what we would have to, where we would have to reallocate funds, what we would have to stop doing as a result of a lack of funding. So we're prepared for multiple scenarios with the budget. It's very early in the process, as you know. The governor's proposal that we received 2 weeks ago now does maintain our existing funding and increases it actually each year over the next 2 years by $811,000. So we would be in good shape to be able to moving forward with that budget, but it's very early in the process, as you know, Eugene. So anything could happen between now and June in terms of a final budget. But we are prepared. The board is prepared. The subcommittee for the board for the budget is prepared for making adjustments depending upon what the final budget is. We do fully understand and have met with members of the BOAT committee. They're invited to our subcommittee meetings that we hold on the budget in preparation for what we'll present to the city, so that when we present it to the city, there is no surprises. They have accepted our invitations to our last two subcommittee meetings and have been at the table while we're walking through our budget ourselves. And we are very cognizant of the need to look at where the city is, not just what you're going to receive in the state funding, but where the city is in terms of being able to support our budget as well. So we're working together on that. It's a partnership, and making sure that again, just like with any committee or project that we're doing, we're a great, tight-knit community. Everybody's voice is heard, and we will move forward with what we believe is a budget that could be supported by the city, knowing what we're getting in state funding as well.
And do you have a tentative date when the school board will consider and adopt their budget, and then from that point it moves to BOAT? When's that happen?
Sure, it'll go to the full board initially on March 7th for review. It will come back to the board on March 16th for a vote by the board, and then go to the city by their date of to go to the city is March 31st. So we will be prepared 2 weeks ahead of time to present to the city.
And just maybe I'm a bleeding heart here, but I've seen a lot of the work firsthand that Alliance District money has done for Derby. It's done a lot in terms of technology, things that I've written stories about over the years at the Irving School. It's really done a heck of a lot of good. It's depressing and amazing to me that money could go away, considering it's not like it's being spent on meals and tab sodas.
Right.
Is there any indication that any of those programs will be able to save by being built into the budget? Will the additional state money save any of your Alliance programs, or what's the deal there? And then I'll let you go.
Sure. The budget, as the governor proposed 2 weeks ago, does keep intact the amount of funding that we received from our regular ECS and then the Alliance District funding on top of it. So it does keep that for Derby, keeps that intact, so we'll be able to maintain the great things we've been able to do through the Alliance. The other thing we review, though, in preparation for any cuts would be, of those items that have been supported by the Alliance District funding, is there other funding, grant funding that we have received that could help support current budgeted items through Alliance that we want to maintain, that we need to maintain moving forward? And so we'd have to look at other grant funding that we receive, how it's currently being used, and should it be reallocated to support some of the things that we're doing with the Alliance District funding, should that go away?
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I think I misunderstood you slightly when you first mentioned all that a couple of minutes ago. All right, hey, Dr. Conway, is there anything else you wanted to add before I hang up on our Google chat here?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right, have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks. Bye.